All right, here we are, John and Will from Men Talking Mindfulness. We're doing our recap ASAP or our preview for those of you who are listening to this for our episode on Everyman Mindfulness. And we had listener guests, Daryl, Roy, and Randy Bach on the show. They are self-proclaimed regular guys, and they are mindfulness practitioners. And the show was phenomenal. They had so many great knowledge bombs on what mindfulness has done for them and what prevented them from getting into mindfulness in the first place. Will, what are your thoughts?
Well, I enjoy how Randy, right from the beginning, or even before our kind of pre-show green room, how he was talking about, the world was just, he was having a shitty day, and everything seemed to be going wrong, and and then in the show he kind of got into that's kind of his ego. I don't think he used the word ego in the show, but wanting to control everything, and then he realized, well, the only thing that I control is myself. And then we started talking and unwrapping how he does that with the mindfulness practices. And he mentioned, the 4-7-8 breath, or just realizing where he is by controlling his breath. Daryl brought in the same kind of sentiments as far as being present. Daryl said that word. I mean, to hear these, these regular guys and men's men talk about being present, talk about finding peace, it is really music to my ears, and really shows the work that we're putting out there in the world. So how about you, John?
Yeah. Well, I loved how, before they ever discovered mindfulness, they had heard about meditation and they just thought that they were too tough to do these things. They thought that, when they were struggling, as Daryl was an entrepreneur and a veteran, Randy is a former E9 in the Air Force, and that's a very high rank in the E-Force on the enlisted side, in the Air Force on the enlisted side. And he's doing amazing things in the military, but he thought, hey, you know what? I'm just going to work harder. When his wife came to him and said, hey, you know what? Something's up. You need to retire. He said, well, I'm just going to go to the gym more and work out harder. The saying, man up, or muscle through it.
Yeah.
That's the perception that so many of us have, is that we can fix this on our own through physical strength or brute force. And they realized, you know what? It wasn't working. It was not working for them. So they tried mindfulness, and guess what? It worked. It helped them to get in touch with their emotions, get in touch with who they are on a deeper level, and also reconnect with their family, their friends, their coworkers on a different level. So I thought that was important. Yeah. And one thing that Daryl brought up was his healing that had to happen. Once he identified some healing that had to happen, he initially thought, well, once I kind of put this out into the universe, this one particular thing, I'm going to be healed. Well, he knew right after saying it, that wasn't the case. And he used this great analogy of kind of going to the storage shed or storage unit and knowing that something that needed to be unpacked was at the very back of this storage shed. And to get to that, you've got to pull everything else out, and it takes a while. And when you do pull everything else out, it's going to be messy for a while. I love that. So these guys just crushed the episode, and they're phenomenal guys. I really enjoyed everything that they had to say. Anything else on your side, brother?
Yeah. One thing I'll mention is I enjoy how they started from practicing mindfulness. They realized that they gave a tremendous amount of effort and respect and their best self to their work. And then they would come home and then use the word litter. They would just kind of litter over their family. They weren't as important as the protector, the protective provider kind of man box, place that we put ourselves into the esteem role, into that social status, into the money, into where we are in the kind of the corporate hierarchy. And then when they'd come home and be so exhausted by kind of putting up that mask on a persona throughout, the day, that they would just be yelling at their kids or, having problems at home and not taking care of those things. And then Daryl, I think, mentioned, he's like, whoa, I don't want he mentioned his son. He has 3 kids. And he had one boy, I think, at least one boy. And he goes, I don't want my son to be like that. So he began to flip the script once he began to become more aware of himself, right, emotionally and physically, and in his relationships. To be like, whoa, I can't be like this in my family. So he kind of flipped it all around and started taking care of his family more. And naturally, he started to just be more of a better boss and a better leader in the organization that he started, 3D Media. So fascinating. Really, I love to hear this. Yeah, I love to hear these epiphanies that they've had, just by being mindful, just by being more present. And if you're more present, then you're going to be more present to your emotional self. And there you'll be probably more likely to understand how you're acting in the world and why you're, being an asshole. in some cases. Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Phenomenal
Yeah.
episode. Really enjoyed it. And definitely love to see the change that mindfulness is making in them, and the change that
Yeah.
mindfulness is making in us, and the change that mindfulness is making in the rest of our audience. So thank you for
In the
being part of
world.
our audience.
Yeah.
Thank you for checking out, and check out this episode when you get a chance. Peace.
Peace.